Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Pocahontas State Park. Thank you all for being here this morning. My name is Nate Clark. I'm the park manager, and I appreciate everybody coming out on this beautiful morning for this historic day and historic event. Really appreciate all of our distinguished guests that have come today. Lieutenant Governor Sears, Secretary James, Secretary Voiles. Appreciate everybody being here today. This is a great occasion. This is a wonderful day for us as Virginia State Parks and the Commonwealth and the nation have just recently celebrated Juneteenth. It's fitting that today that we unveil the newest historical marker in the Commonwealth for our historic Group Camp 7. And again, thank you all for being here. I want to take a quick moment just to recognize and thank our team here at Pocahontas. Several people over the last several years have put a lot of work and a lot of research, a lot of collaboration and networking and reaching out to learn more about the history for Group Camp 7 and the history of our past as we continue to move forward to offer the best recreational opportunity for all the citizens and all the visitors and guests of the Commonwealth. So we appreciate everybody that's put the work in together to get us here today, and appreciate you all being here. And I'd like to hand it over and introduce Director of Department of Conservation and Recreation, Mr. Matt Wells.
Well, good morning, and thank you to everyone for being here today. Like Nate said, I'm Matt Wells. I have the privilege of being the Director of the Department of Conservation and Recreation. We obviously have a number of guests and dignitaries here with us this morning. Just want to briefly recognize them. Some of them you'll be hearing from later today. Lieutenant Governor Sears, always a pleasure to have you here with us. Director of the Department of Diversity, Opportunity, and Inclusion, Dr. Rosa Atkins. Senior Advisor to the Governor Andrew Wheeler. Secretary Travis Voiles, Secretary Kay Cole James, Assistant Secretary Corey Scott, our DHR Director Julie Langan, Delegate Mike Cherry is here as well. We also have Owen Walton, who's the president of the Friends of Pocahontas State Park. We couldn't do this without you all, and Ernestine Wilson, who's a former camper at Group Camp 7, who was instrumental in the research, and we wouldn't be here without you either. So if you'll join me in giving them a round of applause. And I do want to say a very special thanks to our partners, the Department of Historic Resources and VDOT, especially for handling the installation, the perpetual maintenance of the marker that we're going to unveil today. DCR is the state agency that has oversight of our 41 wonderful state parks, and one of the many wonderful things about our parks is that they provide an opportunity to tell stories and to educate. And each one of our parks tells many different stories, and frequently these stories are readily evident. Right? They're suggested by the plants and the animals and the other natural resources that our guests can easily see. These are stories of the land. But there are stories about people, too. And these stories are less evident. Sometimes they are all but lost. They will be lost without someone to bring them to light and to preserve them and to tell them to others. And so I am very grateful that we have a group of dedicated people who brought us to this unveiling today. I want to recognize their exceptional work. Ethan Howes, who has done a tremendous amount of research to bring the story of Group Camp 7 to light, and who we'll hear from shortly again. Ernestine Wilson, who was instrumental in assisting with his research. Bobby Todd, an AmeriCorps member who previously served here at Pocahontas State Park, who suggested the topic to Department of Historic Resources for a historic marker. And Haley Haskins, who's now with our Division of Natural Heritage, and Dustin Yates, who's the assistant manager here at Pocahontas, who continued to work with DHR to see the marker through to completion. I want to thank them for their efforts to make sure that this important story was not lost, and to ensure that this marker serves as a permanent reminder of the history of this place and the people who were here. And now I'm going to ask Dr. Melissa Baker, our Director of State Parks, to come up and share a little bit more of the story of how we got here today. Thank you.
It's a tough world as a short person in the world of tall people. Thank you, Director Wells. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking this time to spend with us this morning as we unveil the historic marker for Group Camp 7. As Director Wells stated, one of the wonderful things about Virginia State Parks is our ability to tell stories about the places that we steward. While many of these stories have to do with the natural world, others have cultural and historic significance. From the African American CCC crews that built many of our parks, to the civil rights activists who ensured Virginia state parks were open to all, to the families who visited areas like Group Camp 7, and those who visit us today, the African American community has had and continues to have a strong influence on Virginia state parks. The work of the dedicated staff at Pocahontas State Park to document the history and to tell the stories of Group Camp 7 is indicative of the efforts throughout the Virginia State Park system to fully and inclusively tell stories of our parks throughout the system. Similar work has been done or is in progress at other Virginia state parks, such as at First Landing State Park, Twin Lakes State Park, and Green Pastures Recreation Area, to name a few. But I'm not going to tell you about how this work came about. I'd rather turn that over to the people who did that work. So to tell us about the work at Pocahontas State Park and to recognize the importance of Group Camp 7, I'd like to introduce Ethan Howes. Ethan came to Pocahontas in April of 2018 as an AmeriCorps member. Upon completing his term, he was hired as a park interpreter and in February of this year became the CCC Museum curator. His passion for history has led him to research multiple aspects of the park's history in hopes of telling a more complete story of the park. Ethan will soon be joining Natural Tunnel State Park as their chief ranger of visitor experience, and I know that he will bring the same passion for telling the stories of all of Virginians to that role. Ethan?
All right. Well, thank you, Director Baker. I was first introduced to Group Camp 7 4 years ago. The information that we had was limited to the maps, blueprints, and memos from the Civilian Conservation Corps. Even the camp itself, the group camp itself, didn't offer much. It was the only thing that really remained today are the lake and a couple of foundations in the dam that holds the lake. There have been several attempts before to find information and to locate stories from former campers. Not much was ever that came about from that. We knew that the CCC had constructed an organized group camp area for African Americans that continued to be leased to black organizations after the park was donated to the Commonwealth in 1946. By the 1970s, the structures had begun to deteriorate, and the area was used sparingly as a day-use camp for youth in Richmond. My research started in 2020. I reached out to a former professor of mine at the University of Richmond. She put me in contact with a church historian, who then put me in contact with Miss Ernestine Wilson. Ms. Wilson and I chatted several times over the phone, but plans for her to visit were put on hold because of the pandemic. During those conversations, Ms. Wilson shared with me stories of her time spent at Camp Carey. Camp Carey was created by an interracial faith partnership between the Women's Missionary Union of Virginia and the Baptist General Convention of Virginia in 1939. Camp Carey's creation meant young black women from across the Commonwealth could come together for a, quote, time of study, worship, meditation, and recreation, end quote. The story of Group Camp 7 began to fill in with the addition of Bobby Todd, our AmeriCorps member, and Kaylin Gillum, who was a park intern at the time. He is now a chief ranger here at Pocahontas. The fog began to lift from over Group Camp 7. Bobby dove into the newspaper archives, equipped with the name Camp Carey and the partnership of the Women's Unitary Mission of Virginia and the Baptist General Convention of Virginia. She found multiple articles announcing the upcoming camps and discussing the successes of the previous years. She also found a book from the Women's Missionary Union of Virginia that discussed the beginnings of Camp Carey, and that they had subleased the Group Camp 7 from the Girl Scouts of Richmond and the Young Women's Christian Association, giving us other organizations that use the area. Bobby then took the lead on crafting and applying for the historical marker that we're gathered here today to dedicate. While Bobby was finding those articles, Kaylin and I ventured into the woods, searching for oddities in the landscape, bricks, concrete, and other man-made materials to locate where the structures had been. We used the maps from the Civilian Conservation Corps to guide our research, or to guide our search. When we saw each other after one of these hikes, we would pull out our phones and share the photos and the coordinates. Those findings included a pump house, a water tower foundation, and multiple other foundations believed to be the cabins themselves. You would have thought it was Christmas morning the way we acted with each other when we would see each other afterwards. The excitement was contagious. This year, I had the great honor of interviewing Miss Ernestine Wilson at the CCC Museum. She explained that her mother led the Bible study for the young women and that she had attended camp with her mother before she was old enough to be a camper. Starting in 1955, she was old enough to attend and would go until 1963. Campers would arrive on Monday and stay for 7 days. During the week, campers had Bible study, nature hikes, do arts and crafts, and had missionaries and other special guest speakers, and had time to recreate in the lake. The only thing Ernestine would change about her summer at camp would be the leeches in the lake. She remembers them being very bad, but that did not stop them from having a good time. Those were some of the best summers of her life. I want to thank Miss Ernestine Wilson for allowing me to share part of her story here today. We do hope to continue our research here at Pocahontas on Group Camp 7, looking into the Girl Scouts of Richmond and the YWCA as well. I'm not sure who's following me. Director. Oh, sorry.
Ethan, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. I know the folks at Pocahontas are sad to see you leave, but I'm sure you'll do great things across our park system. I'm Travis Wills. I'm the Acting Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to leave it up to these other folks that know a lot more, but I have the honor of introducing a few people that I've looked up to tremendously in my short time here with the administration. I know Matt introduced his team, and I want to thank them again for everything that they've done and the work with other individuals involved in this. Dr. Rosa Atkins, Matt mentioned her as well. She's been a great resource since I've started. But next, I'm going to turn it over to our department head for the Department of Historic Resources, Julie Langdon.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here representing the Department of Historic Resources. And if you're not familiar with my small agency, we are the state agency responsible for identifying and then helping people preserve historic sites throughout the Commonwealth. And we administer roughly a dozen state and federal preservation programs, and none is more popular than the Highway Marker Program. We have had ceremonies, unveilings, dedications for the last several weeks as soon as weather warms up, and certainly during the month of June, we are incredibly busy throughout the state dedicating markers. And you all have seen them. There are about 2,600 of them along the roadside in Virginia. They're very distinctive in their design and shape. And we have been working on this system of markers since 1927, which makes Virginia's marker program the oldest in the entire country. So we're really proud of that. To be eligible for a marker, the topic must be of regional, statewide, or national significance. Local significance doesn't quite cut it. It's got to be something that rises to a higher level of importance, and certainly Group Camp 7 rises to that level. As I said, we have the oldest marker program in the country, and while we are proud of it, it does have a shortcoming, and that is that it does not reflect the full range of possible topics and the diversity of our shared history. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Back in the 1920s, when the system started, there was a heavy focus and emphasis on military battles, the presidents who came from Virginia, and that's where we started our focus. But there is so much more to Virginia's history than that. So we have been very deliberately working to diversify the marker system. And let me tell you what these numbers are so that you can appreciate why we've made this a priority. We have 2,600 markers in the system. Only 15% of those focus on any aspect of Black history. And while this number is embarrassingly low, the good news is over the last 5 years, markers about African American history account for 53% of all the new markers approved. So we're trying to make this more balanced and make up for lost time. So the addition of Group Camp 7 brings us one marker closer to a system that celebrates the full and complete history of the Commonwealth. Typically, the department relies on members of the public to recommend topics for markers, to initiate the topic, and usually to pay for the marker itself. In the case of this marker, you've already heard that the topic was initiated by AmeriCorps staff and park staff who shepherded the marker through the process. So on behalf of the department, I thank the Department of Conservation and Recreation staff for bringing us to this point today. And of course, I always want to recognize VDOT, our partner in this program. They install the marker and then they maintain the marker in perpetuity. I challenge any one of you here today to suggest a topic that you think should be included in the system. We invite everybody to participate in this program, so if you have an idea for a topic that has been overlooked, please be in touch with us because we'd love to hear from you. Thanks very much.
Next, I have the honor to introduce Senior Advisor to the Governor, Andrew Wheeler.
Thank you, Travis. And thank you all for being here. What a beautiful day it is. We couldn't pick better weather for this dedication. I want to share just a brief story. What we're recognizing here was basically state-sponsored segregation. But segregation always wasn't state-sponsored. It was also actually ended up being by custom in some aspects. In the late 1950s, my parents lived in St. Louis, and my mother taught elementary school in East St. Louis for 3 years. In her first year, the student body was about 75% white, 25% black. By the end of the third year, it had completely switched. But the teachers, the faculty, was 50-50. And what she found when she got there, there was a black teacher's lounge and a white teacher's lounge. And when my mother is about a decade younger than all the other teachers, and they all kind of took her under their wings. And when she became pregnant with my older sister, and actually you couldn't say pregnant then. In fact, you couldn't even teach after the first trimester. As soon as you started showing, you had to take unpaid leave. But all the white teachers held a baby shower for her at one of their homes. But my mother got along with all the black teachers, and so they also held a separate baby shower for her at one of their homes. So 2 different baby showers. And I think we forget sometimes that not all segregation was state-sponsored. It ended up being by custom and the way people lived and thought at the time. And I tell the story because it was just a generation ago. It wasn't that long ago. We have one of the campers here who camped at this camp. And I'm afraid sometimes when I look at the way the country is going that we're heading back towards self-segregation. And I think we all need to be aware of that and fight that and make sure that people are aware of our past and our history and make sure that we don't always repeat the bad things that happened in our past. And that's why I asked to speak today, and I appreciate everybody being here. And this is an important day and an important marker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Now I have the honor to introduce a woman that I've looked up to for most of my career from afar, and now I get the honor to work with her and see her almost every day. Just a treasure to the Commonwealth and the nation. Secretary of Commonwealth, Ms. James.
Good morning. I think you have more than one former camper here this morning. This morning is special to me because I get to connect some dots. At 73 years old, I actually lived what you now call history. And I can remember coming here as a child. And I was trying to figure it out, and you know, when you get to be my age, you know, the memories get a little fuzzy sometimes. But there were two connections that I made that could possibly have been why I was here. One, I was a Girl Scout in the city of Richmond. Two, I was a member of and very active in the YWCA. And so either of those could have brought me to Camp 7. The one thing I'm sure of is I was here. And so I am grateful for the experience. And as a child, you don't even realize that what you're experiencing is segregation. I know that we had a wonderful time here, and there are fond memories, even though some of them are a little fuzzy. But what's more interesting to me is living long enough to experience the transition. Because when my husband and I moved back to Chesterfield County as a young married couple, it was here that we brought our kids almost every Saturday. And so I am all too familiar with the other parts of Pocahontas as well. And yes, I can remember the bike trails and the swimming and the picnics that we had here as a young family. And so I sort of want to connect the dots from the impression that it had on a young kid that actually came here from the public housing projects of Richmond, brought here to experience what we now just call outdoors. And then the young family that came here and experienced the full range of the park, not designated to one particular area. And so I think we should also celebrate this morning. And yes, you know, having come off of Juneteenth over the weekend and recognizing the importance of that holiday, I tend to be a very positive person by nature. And so rather than focusing on the segregated South, I want to celebrate what we as Americans have done. And I want to celebrate the fact that while we went through that period, we corrected it. And I want to celebrate this morning while not forgetting. Teach the whole history. Tell it all. But celebrate how far we've come. And so I am grateful for all of you who work here, who have preserved this wonderful place. And I give a perspective from someone who came here as a 6, 7, 8 to 10, 12-year-old, and then as a young mom with kids. So for the people of the Commonwealth who enjoy this, please know that we are appreciative of what you do every single day, and appreciative of the fact that you have remembered our history and will tell it. So I'm grateful to you this morning for the opportunity to be here. And now, Charles and I will come back yet again with the 5 grandchildren and have them enjoy Pocahontas as well. So that's 3 generations that are benefiting from what you do. So I asked to speak this morning just to share that with you and to thank you for the important work that you do for generations. And in my lifetime, I've seen it all, and I've seen the transition, and I'm here to celebrate with you this morning. And so with that, I have the privilege of not introducing, but turning the mic over to, because she does not need any introduction. She is our Lieutenant Governor. And more than that, on a word of personal note, she's one of my dearest, best friends and prayer partners, Winsome.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. It is so good to keep finding out about all the history that there is. And so we might as well keep talking about it. Because I want to tell you a few things that back in 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was being proclaimed, there were actually 30 atrocities that were given as reasons why America wanted to separate from Great Britain. But one of them was deleted by the committee, and so we ended up with 29 atrocities. And it was the passage on slavery that Thomas Jefferson had written, in which he said later it was deleted by the Georgia delegation and the North Carolina delegation and some of the northern states who had, as you probably figured, merchant traders in the slave trade. And this is partially what it said. The king has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere or to incur miserable death in their transportation. This political warfare was the power of an infidel, the Christian king of Great Britain, and determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold, he has prostituted himself by suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or restrain this execrable commerce. That's just part of it. But that was deleted because of the issues I just told you. As most of you know, I wasn't born in America. I was born in Jamaica. And while William Wilberforce is credited with getting rid of slavery throughout the British Empire, it was actually a Jamaican slave by the name of Samuel Sharp, who became a born-again believer and became a Baptist preacher and discovered, as he read in his Bible, as he says, that all men were created equal and that white men could not hold black men as slaves and neither could black men hold white men as slaves. And so he started the largest Caribbean rebellion that the empire had ever seen, which continued for many months. Of course, he was hanged for it. 20,000 people were involved in it. And by the end of the rebellion in 1833, England decided they were going to get rid of slavery. And so the next year, there was legislation that said on August 1st, 1834, all slavery would be banned in the British Empire. But what most people don't know is there is an American connection to that. And no, it's not me. It's Jamaican owners in the 1820s, for a time, wanted to secede themselves from Great Britain and to unify with America, because America still had slavery, but it was not to be. And so by the time America's Constitution was ratified in 1788, in order to form that more perfect union, they again left out slavery to be rid of. And so it guaranteed that 73 years later, their grandchildren would die in a fight known as the Civil War to give men that freedom. 73 years, Madam Secretary, the number of your years. And so, even by then, Delaware and Kentucky still held slaves, even after the declaration that men were free. Not until the 13th Amendment, 1865, did they get rid of it. And the Choctaw Indians finally got rid of their slaves in 1866. So now we just celebrated Juneteenth. And I know there are some people, they're so miserable that they say, well, Juneteenth wasn't the day, that slavery. But for those people, when General Gordon Granger showed up on June 19th in 1865 in Galveston, Texas, and declared to them that under General Order Number 3, they were free, that was a mic drop moment for them. That was their freedom. So we're going to leave these miserable people behind, and we're going to celebrate Juneteenth because God help us and save us from them. Yes. But then did slavery disappear everywhere? Actually, no. You wouldn't believe that even up until 1981, there was one final country that decided that slavery was to be abolished, and that was Mauritania of northern Africa, and they didn't even criminalize it until 2007. But there is still slavery, as we know. Sometimes it's a slavery of the mind, and we're not going back. Our forefathers did not die in the fields so that we could be beholden to any political party. They died for freedom. They died for freedom. And that's what we're celebrating today, and we thank all of you for this marker. Thank you. Thank you. Thank all of you for this. We must always remember, because one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. But this helps us to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Sears. Thank you to all of our speakers here today. What a wonderful day and a wonderful event and a wonderful time to remember how far we have come and how far we still have yet to go. I want to now invite our speakers and the guests who I introduced to join me back that way for the official unveiling of the marker. Space is a little tight back there, and we are pinned up against a road, so I just asked for those folks to come with us. We'll unveil the marker, and we'll come back here. But again, thanks to everyone for being here with us on this wonderful day today. Thank you.